Welcome to the Connor's Corner segment of Ask the Lawyer. With me right now is a person of great courage who's not afraid to speak out even though she's been vilified over the years. And who I'm talking about is Juanita Broaddrick, and she has a book out. You better put some ice on that. How you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Mike. Thanks.
Of all the abuse you've taken all these years, why are you opening the door up again with this book?
Well, I've really been pretty active for about the last 2 years since I first learned how to tweet and answered Hillary Clinton's tweet. But this really didn't start out to be a book. After I came back from the inauguration activities last year, I wanted to sit down at the computer and compile my life for my kids and for my family to have, with all the dates and everything that had happened to me. And I just thought it would be a good thing to leave for them. And then about 4 months ago, I was contacted by a young investigative reporter out of Jacksonville, Florida. His name is Nick Lully. And he contacted me wanting to do like a serialized documentary. And I told him yes, I would think about it, and that would be good. And in the meantime, I sent him my journal. And in a day or two after he had read it, he called me back and he said, "We don't need to worry about a documentary." He said, "We need to do a book." So that's really how it happened. I never planned to write a book.
Can you take some of the listeners back? Because some people have heard your story, but other people may have just heard have a glimpse or two of what happened. Bill Clinton,
Sure.
Going back, he was Attorney General of the state of Arkansas. What happened?
Right. Okay. Back in 1978, I was a nursing home owner and a registered nurse. And at that time, I began hearing about Bill Clinton running for governor. You would see all of his ads on TV, and I just thought he was great. I thought he was going to be great for Arkansas. So I began to work as a volunteer in his campaign. After my office hours, I would go around in the evening and put up yard signs and hand out campaign information to all the people that I knew and others that I didn't know, that I just would hand out information. And then after I'd been working in his campaign for about a month, I got a call from the state headquarters, and they were requesting that my nursing home be one of the places that he visited on a campaign tour. And we were so excited. We thought, this is great. So I told him, yes, we would love to have him. Notified all the newspaper and everybody when he was going to be there, and the family members were so anxious to meet him. So that's, in essence, what happened. The day that he came, we had a photo op with Mr. Clinton, myself, and two of my residents. And after the photo op, he came over to me and started talking about me and asking questions about me and about the nursing home. And at the time, I was very interested in talking to him about our nursing home because we were really struggling. Well, all nursing homes in Arkansas were struggling with the reimbursement rate. And me being a nurse, it was just tantamount to me to want to do the very best that I could for my residents, but we weren't being paid adequately. And he seemed very interested in this. And he said, "Are you ever in Little Rock?" And I said, "Yes, I am. And I will be there in about 3 weeks for a nursing home seminar." And he said, "Well, when you get down here," he said, "call my campaign headquarters and we'll get together and talk about this." And listen, Mike, I was so excited. I worked for 2 or 3 days making graphs and all these charts for what it took to take care of one patient adequately, and then what we were being reimbursed. So I was really looking forward to this. And it was on April the 24th, 1978, my nurse, Norma Rogers, and I headed for Little Rock. We checked in at the Camelot Hotel on the 24th, and on the morning of the 25th, I called his campaign headquarters, and a young lady answered. I told her who I was and that Mr. Clinton had told me to call him when I was in town. And she immediately said, Oh, yes, Mrs. Hickey. Mr. Clinton said if you ever called, to be sure and call his apartment number. So I did, and Bill Clinton answered the phone. And I asked him if it would be possible for us to come over at noon during our break from the seminar to bring all this information and talk to him. And he said, I'm not going to be there today. He said, why don't I just come to your hotel now? And I thought that was wonderful, that he would be that nice enough to come over to my hotel. So I told him, yes, I would love to have him come over to the hotel. And he said, well, we'll just meet down in the coffee shop. And so I told Norma to go on to the meeting. And after I left the coffee shop, that I would be on to the meeting. Well, a little while later, Mr. Clinton gets to the hotel. He calls my room. And he says, it's so crowded down here, and there's reporters. He said, it would be more convenient if we would just have coffee in your room. And, you're talking 40 years ago. Of course, I thought, I'm sure at that time I was a little bit uneasy, but this was the Attorney General of the state of Arkansas, and I had important things to talk to him about. So I told him, yes, that we could meet in my room and that I would order coffee to the room. So Norma goes on to the meeting, and Mr. Clinton comes up to my room, and just right after the people bring the coffee, he knocks on the door. And I look through the little peephole, and there stands someone in the hall in sunglasses, and then I realize that it's him. And I open the door and usher him on into the room and take him right over to the table where I have the coffee and all the information. And I really don't like to go in. I'll go into the beginning of what happened. He goes to the window and he takes off his suit coat and just sort of throws it over the back of one of the chairs. And he starts talking and motions for me to come to him and pointing down below. My room looked out on the Arkansas River, and it looked down at some old dilapidated buildings. And he was wanting to show me a building in particular that he wanted to convert and restore. It was like an old 1800 jailhouse. And he pointed down to it. And as he did, when I walked over to him, he put his arm around my shoulder to point down to it. And that felt a little uneasy. So I sort of backed away. And he sort of looked at me strange and pulled me to him rather quickly and tried to start kissing me. And that's when I told him, no, I'm a married woman, but I also have other things going on in my life. And I made it very clear that is not what I wanted. I had invited him up to the room only to talk business. And things went bad from worse. They really went bad right after that. And that's when the rape occurred. Pushed me backwards onto the bed. And when I got loud, he would bite on my top lip. And that I can still remember how frightening and how painful that was. And I don't really like to go into the specifics, so I'll pick up after the rape occurred. I was devastated. I'd never been attacked by a man like that. I had never even known anyone who had been raped or someone had tried to rape them. This was unknown to me. And I'm a registered nurse, but it was just still something I had never experienced or heard about. And so after the rape was over, I sat up on the side of the bed. I was crying. I was truly crying, trying to cover myself with the sheets and everything from the bed. And I look up at him, and he's just looking at me with this look of bewilderment and frustration, like, what was I crying about, And he calmly puts on his suit coat, And he walks to the door and he puts on his sunglasses and he motions with his hand to me and to my face and says, "You better put some ice on that." And then just calmly walks out the door. Like it was an everyday occurrence.
Did you ever think at that time of going to the police or whatever authority?
No, I never even. This man was the Attorney General of my state. I had no witnesses except for the lady that found me 30 minutes later. I mean, he was the Attorney General. He was about to be governor. He regulated my business. Everything went through the Attorney General's office and the governor's office regulating nursing homes in Arkansas. I wanted nothing to do with telling anyone what happened to me. I blame myself for allowing this monster to come to my room. That was the mentality back then. You know, it was men will be men, just deal with it. Even though this was a horrific thing to deal with, I never wanted to come forward, and I never wanted anyone to know what I felt at that time I had allowed to happen to me.
Juanita, we're going to have to take a short break. You're listening to Ask the Lawyer with me, Mike Connors. We're talking to Juanita Broaddrick about being raped by Bill Clinton. Welcome back to Ask the Lawyer with me, Mike Connors. We're talking to Juanita Broaddrick about her experience with Bill Clinton before he became president of the United States. Now, do you think Hillary Clinton knew? And of course, I know the answer, but did you think Hillary Clinton knew about it?
I don't know that to the degree, except that time when I met her 3 weeks after the rape had occurred. I felt at that time she knew. Would you like for me to tell you about that?
Please.
Okay. I was still in a state of shock after. I mean, this devastated my life. And before the rape, I was a very hard worker in his campaign. I had arranged for a fundraiser to be held at my close friend's home, Betty and Buddy Criswell. Betty and I played tennis together. Buddy was my dentist, and they had this beautiful home in Van Buren. So while I was still campaigning, I arranged for this fundraiser to be at their home. And I knew I wasn't going to attend the fundraiser, but, you know, I didn't even really think about it until the day before. And I called Betty and told her, I said, I can't come. I've had something come up, and I can't come to the fundraiser, but I'll bring you the information that I have beforehand, and then but I won't be able to stay. And she was very nice, and she understood. She didn't know what had happened to me, and she was very understanding. So I went up there early to her home. It was about 6:30. The fundraiser started at 7, and gave her the information, and I also had some checks that I wanted her to give to the lady from the state office. When I would go around in the evenings, people would give me checks for the campaign, and they were not more than $25, but it's everything I was wanting to get out of my hands and into somebody else's hands, because I wanted nothing to do with that campaign from there on out. But before I could get out, the Clintons come through the back kitchen area. And as they come in, a friend of mine who had driven them from the airport comes over to me. And he said, and his name is Chuck Watts. He was a local pharmacist. And he says, I just want you to know that the topic of the conversation all the way from the airport was the Clintons asking me about you. And I froze, and I thought, I've got to get out of here. I'm not going to stay around any longer. And so just about that time, I see Hillary Clinton standing in the kitchen, and Betty standing with her, and they're pointing to me. Betty's pointing to me. And here comes Hillary Clinton straight for me. And you know, Mike, at that moment in time, as I saw her coming, I can still remember thinking, oh, this poor woman who's married to that monster. What on earth am I going to say to her? And she comes over to me, and she takes a hold of my hand, and she starts saying how nice it is to meet me and how grateful she and Bill are for everything that I'm doing in the campaign, and just very nice, pleasant smile. And I don't know if I nodded or if I said thank you before I turned to leave from her. But as I turned to leave, I felt somebody grab me from behind. And I thought someone was just going to tell me goodbye. And I turn around, and it's Hillary Clinton. And she has her hands on my arm, and she pulls me down to her, and she has a very angry look on her face. She's not friendly anymore. And she says to me, "Do you understand everything you do?" And that was very frightening. I mean, I took my arm from her grip, and I walked out of there immediately.
So in your mind, you had no doubt that was a threat.
Oh, none whatsoever. And it's the same as when Andrea Mitchell called me about 2 years ago and said, "How do you know that's what she meant?" And just as I told Andrea Mitchell on the phone, you would have to have been standing in my shoes, felt the grip, heard the tone of her voice. You would have known what she meant. She was telling me, I know what happened, or I know something happened, and it would be best if you stay quiet.
How did you feel when Bill Clinton was elected president of the United States?
Oh, my God. Up until that time, things had begun to come out in Arkansas about his past, and there were so many things that come up, and I would think with each one of these, oh, somebody's got to pull this man down. Surely somebody will come up with something, so I won't have to. It was devastating, to see him rise in power and know that I was keeping something quiet that was so horrible. It was so difficult.
Why did you decide eventually to go public, and why?
Oh, I never decided to come forward. I was outed by the Paula Jones suit. That was never, I was comfortable in life. I was a successful businesswoman. I had everything that I could want, except for that, losing that memory of what had happened to me on April the 25th. But I was happy in my life. And then all of a sudden, here comes the Paula Jones lawsuit. And I was indignant. I was angry. I wanted nothing to do with it. And that's exactly what I told my attorney. Get me out of this. I am not coming forward. And so that's when I denied it. I knew if I denied it, I would never be subpoenaed by the Jones lawsuit.
And then what happened?
And then here comes Ken Starr. Okay. Approximately, it was several months after I had denied in the Paula Jones suit. And so my attorney calls my son. My son is an attorney. And he says, "I've gotten a request for an interview and deposition from Ken Starr." And my son came to see me here at my home. And he said, "Mom, this is serious." My son had known about it since he was a teenager. And he says, "This is serious." He says, "When you're talking about Paula Jones, you're talking about a civil lawsuit." He says, "This is federal." He said, "You've got to go ahead and come forward and tell the truth." And at that moment, I remember saying, I cannot bring out what happened to me. I can't talk about it. And he said, "I know that's how you feel, but we don't have a choice." He said, "You've got to come forward." So I thought about it. And so, yeah, I agreed with him. It was time. I had to go ahead and face the music. And I did. So that's when I told the Dave Schiffer's investigators what had happened.
I'd hate to say it this way, but the media didn't believe you.
No, of course they didn't. I don't think it was convenient for them, Mike. I think this was a president that most of the mainstream media had always supported. And you didn't have everything like the Me Too that you have now going on. And you didn't have the New York Times coming forward saying, "I believe Juanita." It was a different time. They didn't, whether they believed me and didn't want to admit it, or they didn't believe me, I don't know.
But, even at this time, there were a lot of other factors. There was Jennifer Flowers. There was Monica Lewinsky. There was Miss Willie. I mean, Paula Jones. I mean, you weren't the only one who said anything.
Oh, I know. I know. And with each one of those that came out, I kept thinking, it's going to happen. They're going to bring him down. And with each time, I was so relieved that I didn't have to come, that I wasn't being forced forward until the Paula Jones suit came out. It was hard. It was hard after I had lied in the Paula Jones suit to come into those investigators from the impeachment, from the general counsel, and say in detail what had happened to me. That was extremely hard.
All right, so we fast forward and Hillary Clinton runs for president. What's your reaction?
Well, when she first ran, when she was wanting the nomination, I supported Barack Obama. I gave probably $5,000 to the Barack Obama campaign just so she wouldn't be in there. I wasn't a Democrat. I wasn't a Republican. I just did not want her in. But then when she ran in 2016, I got involved sort of in the backdoor fashion. Hillary, in November of 2015, put out her tweet that all victims of sexual abuse should come forward and be believed, something to that effect. And I had to see that play over and over on the TV about her saying that. And then in January of 2016, I thought, I've got to answer her, and I don't know how. And so I remembered Twitter, and I thought, I'm going to reply to her tweet on Twitter. So I had to call my grandson when he got home from school and have him walk me through how I do a tweet. And so I worked on it after he gave me the instructions what to do. And then that next morning, I remember sitting here in my kitchen where I'm sitting right now thinking, okay, how do I get this? Working it all through, getting it so no little red letters come up. And then I had it done perfectly. Mike, I did not say anything that I hadn't said in the 25 previous years. In the 20 so previous years. It was the same thing that I had said. And but it was instant and it was to the world. And when I punched tweet, all hell broke loose. And my phone started ringing off the wall, and my son called me. I didn't ask him. I didn't tell him what I was going to do. I had no idea the power of Twitter. I was a 73-year-old woman that was, just learning how to use Twitter. And he said, Mom, what did you do? And I said, I don't know. That was I probably had 100 messages on my phone machine that I just stopped answering, completely stopped answering. Had no idea. That tweet went viral.
This is changing the subject slightly, but it's a different world today. What do you think about Me Too and so forth? Women coming out today.
I think it's good. I think it's good for those women to have responded to Alyssa Milano's tweet of, if you've been sexually abused, tweet me too, reply me too. But I don't think it did what maybe they hoped it would do. I think it got the Hollywood people on the cover of the Time magazine, and I don't think it included everybody. I think this was a liberal movement, and that's honestly what I believe. If you were a Hollywood socialite, then this was a good thing for you to tweet. But what happened to all those millions of people that tweeted that bared their soul, came out and said, me too? Where are they now? Where have they had the space to process what happened to them? They got no recognition. They got no kind of relief for the pain that they suffer, but the Hollywood people did.
I have one final question for you. Do you think Bill and Hillary Clinton are ever going to meet justice in this world?
Oh gosh, just like I tweeted here a while back, I've been through so many gotcha moments with them, and they've been bulletproof. I feel a little bit better about it. I feel like that the time may be coming, but no, I have no idea. Uh, they they have gotten by with so much, and I hope so, but I'm a little doubtful.
Thank you, Juanita, for telling your story. The name of the book, you better put some ice on that. The story of Juanita Broaddrick and Bill Clinton. Thank you very much for sharing your story with us at Connor's Corner.
Hey, Mike, so nice to talk to you.